And there really weren't a whole lot of answers that I was being given.
So let me ask you, how does it feel when we say like that God's absence is normal? Like, how does that hit you?
It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, to be completely honest. I mean, I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of God being absent.
I want to talk about three things, pretty briefly, three things to do when you feel like God is absent. Because I think that's really where kind of the rubber meets the road. You might be going through a time right now where God feels like he's on mute and you've lost the TV remote somewhere down in the cushions. And you're wondering what's going on. And I always think about I used to watch TV with my grandpa before he passed away a few years ago. And he'd put it on mute, go to a commercial. He'd start talking to me. He'd come back and watching some sporting event. Some call would be made. And he goes, I wonder what they're talking about. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe if you unmute it, we could know. So, and I think sometimes we even feel like that. Like, I wonder what God wants from me. I don't know. If maybe he'd start talking to me, I would know. Okay, so what's he doing? So number one, so three things. So we countered three myths, and those three myths, again, countered by truths. Three myths. Myth number one, as I mature in my faith, that God will automatically feel closer. And we said, no, it's not true. Maturing and God's closeness aren't always connected. The number two, that myth two, when I don't feel God, it's my fault. Not true. The truth is, there is not always a correlation between what we do and how God behaves. And then myth three we shared is that God actually leaves us. And we said, no, the truth to that is God will never leave us. It's really only his felt presence. So there's three myths, three truths. Now I want to give you three things to do. So what do you do when God feels absent? Number one, remember that this is normal. This is a normative process in the life of all Christians. We just don't talk about it. That it is not always rainbows and unicorns and butterflies and everything's going fine. Sometimes there are dark, dark nights as a Christian. And I don't know why you came to Jesus or what bill of goods you were sold that is probably proven to be false, because anything we sell to try to get you to come to Jesus that's not Jesus in and of itself will ultimately fail. So, you know, you're promised a better life and more money and better health and a wife or a husband or whatever it is, then that's not the gospel. The good news is that God has made a way for you to be in his presence for all eternity. And so know this, that God wants you to feel his absence, but for a purpose. But he's also present with us, even if he's silent. Stu, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's accurate because, you know, when I became a Christian, I had no idea that I was going to encounter the trials and the struggles that I faced. And there really weren't a whole lot of answers that I was being given.
So let me ask you, how does it feel when we say like that God's absence is normal? Like, how does that hit you?
It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, to be completely honest. I mean, I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of God being absent. However, after the experience that I've had, it's not as alarming to me. And I feel like, you know, as you mature, you will encounter, the more you encounter those periods of desolation, the more you're going to recognize them when they come and recognize, okay, this is another learning moment for me. And you begin to appreciate it. Because that's where I feel like I am now. You know, just with the turmoil of, you know, jobs and things like that. You know, I feel like I'm praying about it. I feel like I'm not getting anything back about it. And this is where I feel like God allows us to make our decisions sometimes. That if we are truly, you know, walking with him, it doesn't matter where we are. He's going to use us. And so he doesn't say, this is where I need you to go. It's, you are my tool in whatever capacity you're in. You will be utilized for my power and my good and my plan.
Yeah. My second point with what do I do when God feels absence is like, so if we know that God hasn't left us, he's actually present, is to run headlong into it. And so I want you to think about the difference between buffaloes and cows, right? And the difference between buffaloes and cows. So in the plains, or so I've been told, is that when a storm starts cresting over the mountains, that buffalo will run directly into the storm. And what they do during that time is they are actually getting the storm over with as fast as possible. They're running right into it. But cows, on the other hand, cows will actually stand there and wait. And sometimes the cows will even go and find cover under a tree. Well, in a storm, a tree gets struck by lightning, and then the cow actually dies. And so in an attempt to an attempt of self-preservation, they actually meet their demise on this. And so when we move to self-preservate, it can really hurt us long-term rather than running into it. And so this, when I say run into it, here's what I mean, is that we need to find the places that God is present, even if we don't feel it. And the two that I usually give are this. One is his word, the Psalms in particular. And that's a whole another episode we should do, of Psalms of disorientation, and read up on a guy named Walter Brueggemann. And he talks about these Psalms where, Jesus uses one of Psalm of disorientation on the cross, Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? And so you can check that out. But I think understand that his word is a great place where he is present, even if you can't feel him. And then in others, in community, because often what do we do when we stop reading the Bible? Because it just makes sense. I'm not sure if I believe it. I'm not sure if it's true anymore. Man, there's so many inconsistencies, man. Doesn't he teach me to hate people in there? Isn't this awful? Blah. We go on and on and on, and we drop it. And then the other side is, or then we avoid people. And then we try to find like-minded people during that time, or we're all miserable, and we all just make ourselves miserable together. So find good, solid, wise Christians to be around. And a third, you might even add to it, is just like find a good therapist during these times. And somebody who's been trained, who doesn't know all the players in your life, can be really good. And it's part of the reason I'm in therapy. One of the many reasons I'm in therapy. And because I get it, I'm in the process of finding a new one, and have, a couple sessions in with a new one, figuring out if we're a good fit. It takes time to figure that out.
I think there's a great example of that second point, the running headlong into it. A couple weeks ago, I was on vacation, and you just texted, hey man, I'm praying for you. And I responded with, hey man, this is my exact turmoil, the thing that's giving me strife right now. I said, I'm really struggling with, this specific thing. And you were just like, man, thank you for, being honest and, giving me the specifics of what I can do to pray for you. But, that is what the Christian life is for. That's what our Christian brothers are for. That's what, the reason why you have accountability and all that kind of stuff amongst each other is because of things like that. The willingness to be open, the willingness to surrender stuff and, run headlong into, the uncomfortable stuff.
No, absolutely. And I would add to that, like with that, what do you need to learn and how can you learn it? What are the areas in your life that God is trying to teach you, that you're living in this, sufficiency of yourself in that? So stay connected to his word, to Christian community, and then figure out what it is you need to learn and go from there.
Allow him to prune you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because we can recoil back and we get nipped and we're just like, what? You cut me. Like, well, I was trying to, take out that branch that wasn't bearing fruit in your life. It was actually hurting you more than it was helping you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but you're going to cut me. No, I'm trying to help you. And so when we don't want to get cut, that leads us to our final thing. I would say don't give up, because too often we just want to give up. This is the work of sanctification. It is not an easy road. And you think about like the life of Joseph. Joseph was this punk, arrogant kid. Old Testament Joseph, not Jesus' earthly father, Old Testament Joseph. And he was his father's favorite. His dad gave him a nice wardrobe. He went and kind of wore it out in front of his other brothers. He had 11 other brothers. And then he had these dreams. He could interpret dreams. He had dreams that like his brothers were bowing down before him. And I don't know, like if you're like the second to youngest kid, probably not a good idea to tell your like 10 older brothers that they're all going to bow down to you. That doesn't win people over, right? So, but he had to learn some humility in that. He gets thrown in, gets sold into slavery, and ends up getting wrongfully accused of trying to rape a woman, ends up thrown in jail. It's just a mess. And then ultimately he ends up next to Pharaoh, and his brothers come and bow before him because there's a famine in the land. And so I'm not doing the story full justice, but something he says, Joseph says, which you intended to harm me, but God intended for good to accomplish what is now being done to save many lives. I think that's just so important in our lives, to remember that. So don't give up, that we can prolong the silence by giving up too early. And I'm really, truly convinced that this is a lot of the deconstruction we see. It's trauma and hurt. They are very real. And there are some people out there who want to weaponize their faith against others and really aren't interested in following Jesus. They're interested in using Jesus for their own power and their own gain. But so if that's your story and what you're coming out of, like, go find community, find a therapist, get help for it. But don't just deconstruct to be like, look what I destroyed. Anybody can take a sledgehammer to something and tear it down. It takes time to rebuild something that matters. Build a life of purpose on purpose, and that takes time. So as we wrap up this episode, I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, if you could do us a favor, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, would you like and review this and share it with a friend? You have no idea how much that actually helps the show find the right people, but it also encourages us as well. And so that's a huge encouragement to us. And so please make sure you go right now, subscribe to the show, and then leave a review or a comment, and that would be amazing. And so if you have any comments, feel free to reach out. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Rebuilt Life, or you can email us at hello@rebuilt.life. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Adios.